One named decades of denial in a 2024 court filing that dragged an old hip-hop ghost back into the spotlight. In 2024, old wounds reopened as new filings revived questions surrounding Tupac's death, long denied, debated, and officially unresolved today. And here's where it really starts. Before Tupac, before Diddy, hip-hop already had a fault line running straight through it. Hip-hop was born in New York, in the Bronx, at block parties where DJs stretched records and crowds moved as one. The East Coast saw itself as the origin point, the blueprint, the authority. By the 80s, New York artists carried that pride loudly, believing the culture belonged to them because it started with them. Then the West Coast found its voice. Los Angeles brought a different sound, heavier bass, street stories, police tension, and a rawness that felt cinematic. What began as a regional flavor quickly turned into competition. Albums weren't just music anymore. They were statements. There were moments when people tried to slow things down. Songs called for unity. Artists said the same struggle lived on both coasts. But the industry was growing fast, money was pouring in, and egos were inflating even faster. By the early 90s, it wasn't just about beats or bars. It was an identity. East versus West became a badge people wore, defended, and sometimes died for. So when Tupac Shakur and Sean Combs crossed paths, the tension was already baked in. They entered. And this is where the business turned into a battlefield. On the West Coast, Death Row Records exploded onto the scene after Suge Knight teamed up with Dr. Dre add Snoop Dogg into the mix. And suddenly the West wasn't asking for respect anymore. It was taking it. Albums like The Chronic and Doggy Style didn't just dominate charts, they shifted power. Back east, Sean Puffy Combs was building something of his own. Fresh off being fired from Uptown Records, Diddy launched Bad Boy Records with a point to prove. He wasn't just making music, he was building an empire. Then came Biggie Smalls, raw, charismatic, street-hardened. Under Diddy's guidance, his rise was fast and undeniable. What started as label competition quickly felt personal. Two coasts, two bosses, two visions, and no room for compromise. Here's the part people forget. Tupac and Biggie were once close. Before the beef, there was real friendship. Biggie spent time crashing at Tupac's place in Los Angeles. They laughed, shared ideas, and talked about the game. Tupac saw something in Biggie early and respected his talent. At one point, Biggie even asked Tupac to manage him. Tupac turned it down and told him something important. Stick with Diddy. He believed Diddy could make him a star, no matter what. But as the East-West tension grew, small things started feeling bigger. Phone calls felt colder, moves felt calculated, trust slowly cracked. That friendship mattered because when things went wrong later, it didn't feel random to Tupac. It felt personal, and betrayal always cuts deeper than rivalry. And then came the night everything changed. On November 30th, 1994, Tupac walked into Quad Studios in New York to record a guest verse. He never made it upstairs. In the lobby, three men confronted him. Seconds later, gunfire erupted. Tupac was shot multiple times but survived. What rattled him wasn't just the attack, it was what followed. Diddy and Biggie showed up afterward, along with Jimmy Henchman Roseman, the same man who had called Tupac to the studio that night. To outsiders, it looked like a robbery. To Tupac, it felt staged. Lying in a hospital bed, later sitting in prison, Tupac became convinced this wasn't a coincidence. He believed people he trusted knew something, or worse, set him up. From that moment on, suspicion hardened into belief, and Diddy's name never left Tupac's mind. And this is where the tension turned toxic. After the Quad Studios shooting, Tupac was sent to prison in early 1995. Isolated, angry, and replaying everything in his head, the walls closed in. Every detail mattered now. Every phone call, every visit, every silence. Diddy came to see him while he was locked up. He said Bad Boy had nothing to do with the shooting. But for Tupac, the visit didn't calm anything. It did the opposite. By then, trust was gone. In interviews, especially with Vibe magazine, Tupac stopped holding back. He said he believed Diddy knew more than he was admitting. Only he knows, Tupac said. Not a courtroom accusation, but something personal, almost spiritual. A belief that the truth sat between two men, not on paper. What really fueled Tupac's anger was denial. To him, every public rejection made the situation louder. If nothing happened, why keep explaining? In Tupac's mind, silence would have spoken louder than words. Instead, the gap widened, and paranoia turned into conviction. And then it spilled onto a national stage. At the 1995 Source Awards, Suge Knight stepped up to the mic and lit a match. He mocked Bad Boy openly, taking a clear shot at Diddy and his flashy image. The crowd reacted instantly. Cheers, noise, division. The beef wasn't whispered anymore. It was televised. Diddy responded calmly later, wishing Tupac well and urging peace. On the surface, it looked mature. Underneath, nothing cooled down. Not long after, Suge Knight's close friend, Big Jake Robles, was murdered after leaving a birthday party. Diddy had been there that same night. No proof, no charges, but Suge blamed him anyway. Suspicion spread fast. When Suge got out of jail, he didn't waste time. Tupac officially joined Death Row Records. That move wasn't just business, it was a declaration. 2 labels, 2 leaders, 2 sides locked in. From that point on, there was no pretending this was just music. This is where the records stopped sounding like records. Tupac went straight for the jugular. Hit 'em up wasn't subtle, symbolic, or coded. It was direct, personal, and aggressive. Names were named, lines were crossed. It sounded like war. Some fans believe Biggie fired back quietly through subliminals in tracks like Long Kiss Goodnight. Nothing explicit, but enough for people listening closely, enough to keep the fire burning. At this point, the beef was irreversible. Pride was involved, reputation was involved, and too many people were standing behind both sides. Music didn't just reflect the conflict, it amplified it. Every verse added pressure, every song raised the stakes. The streets were listening as closely as the fans. When art starts bleeding into real life, there's no rewind button. And the danger was no longer hypothetical. And then came Las Vegas. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac was at the MGM Grand with Suge Knight. Inside the casino, Tupac got into a physical fight with Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, a known gang member. It was caught on surveillance. Tension was visible, emotions were high. Later that night, Tupac rode in a black BMW with Suge Knight. At a stoplight, a white Cadillac pulled up alongside them. Shots rang out. Chaos erupted. Tupac was hit 4 times. Suge was grazed. The Cadillac vanished into the night. There were no immediate arrests, no clear suspects, no solid motive confirmed. Tupac was rushed to the hospital, fighting for his life. For 6 days, the world waited. Fans prayed. Rumors exploded. Then on September 13th, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from his injuries. Just like that, one of hip-hop's most powerful voices was gone. And the questions, who did it, why, and who knew, only got louder. And just when you thought it might settle, the spotlight shifted again. After Tupac's death, Diddy and Snoop Dogg, a West Coast icon himself, made a rare joint appearance on The Steve Harvey Show. They spoke about unity, urging the East and West Coast to stop the violence. "We've got to come together, shake hands, call for peace," Snoop said. The cameras rolled. The world watched. And for a moment, hope flickered. Meanwhile, Biggie returned to Los Angeles to promote his new album. Tensions were high. At the Soul Train Music Awards, boos rained down from the audience. The appearance was meant to be brief, just one public stop before he left for London. But the hostility was palpable. Every step felt like walking on a knife's edge. In the early hours of March 9th, 1997, Biggie left the awards party. A drive-by shooting killed him instantly. The tragedy mirrored Tupac's death, fueling rumors of retaliation and a spiral of vengeance that no one could control. Fans speculated endlessly. Was it East Coast revenge? Was it a continuation of the Death Row Bad Boy feud? The deaths of Tupac and Biggie cemented the East-West rivalry as one of hip-hop's darkest chapters, and the world was left with questions, not answers. And here's where the media stoked the fire. Investigative reporter Chuck Phillips, writing for the LA Times in 2002, suggested Orlando Anderson was the shooter who killed Tupac. Phillips also implied that Biggie might have supplied the murder weapon. The article sent shockwaves across the hip-hop world. Fans debated, conspiracy theories spread, and tensions resurfaced. The claims were explosive, especially the alleged $1 million hit tied to Diddy through connections in the case. For years, the story lingered in headlines and whispers at award shows, fueling speculation that someone high up had orchestrated the attacks. But the LA Times retracted the piece in 2008. Diddy had publicly denounced the allegations, calling them beyond ridiculous and completely false. He dismissed any connection to Tupac's murder, emphasizing that he had never been a suspect in the case. Still, the shadow of doubt never fully disappeared. Even decades later, the 2002 bombshell reminded the world, in hip-hop, music, and real-life violence were intertwined, and media coverage could amplify rumors as much as truths. Fans, critics, and artists alike continued debating, proving that in this story, nothing stayed buried for long. And now we meet the man at the heart of the investigation, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. Keefe D. was a former gang leader with deep connections in Los Angeles street world. He was also the uncle of Orlando Anderson, the man identified as the shooter in Phillips's reporting. This family and gang network meant Keefe D. had the reach and the influence to be a pivotal figure in Tupac's final days. In 2009, police interviewed Keefe D., and those statements resurfaced in court filings in 2024. He repeatedly alleged that Diddy had offered him $1 million to handle the problem, not only targeting Tupac, but also allegedly Suge Knight. These claims instantly reignited the debate about Diddy's possible involvement, even decades after the fact. But Keefe D's statements have always been inconsistent. Over the years, he has contradicted himself, exaggerated details, and shared conflicting versions of events. That makes him a difficult source to fully trust. Still, his connection to both the shooter and the broader death row bad boy feud makes him central to the case. Whether his stories are entirely accurate or partially fabricated, law enforcement sees him as a person of interest, the man who might finally explain what really happened that night in Las Vegas. For Tupac's family and fans, Keefe D represents the closest link to answers. And for the world, he's the thread tying one of hip-hop's deadliest mysteries together. And here's the twist that brought everything back into headlines. In September 2023, Keefe D was arrested in Las Vegas and charged with murder, including a gang enhancement. For decades, his name had floated around rumors, but he had managed to avoid real consequences until now. Authorities claimed he acted as the shot caller, orchestrating the attack that killed Tupac. Then came 2024. Court filings revealed old interviews from 2009 that had never been fully disclosed. In those interviews, Keefe D allegedly detailed not only his own role, but repeatedly referenced Diddy, claiming he had ordered the shooting. The filings reignited the case, sending shockwaves through the music world. Suddenly, decades-old gossip had formal legal weight. This was more than resurfacing speculation. With Keefe D in custody, prosecutors had a chance to finally pin down a narrative in court. His trial is now scheduled for February 2026. Until then, the investigation looms large, and Tupac's family continues pushing for answers. For fans and historians, these developments raise the question, could this finally solve the mystery that has haunted hip-hop for nearly 30 years? And while Keefe D awaits trial, one thing is clear. The world is watching, and every statement could rewrite the story of Tupac Shakur's death. And then, the family took action. In 2024, Tupac's family decided it was time to revisit the case officially. They hired high-profile attorney Alex Spiro and assembled a team of independent investigators to dig into decades-old leads, interviews, and evidence. The goal wasn't revenge, it was justice. Every detail, every overlooked clue, every rumor was examined under a new lens. Stepbrother Tupac Shakur made it clear that the investigation wasn't personal against Diddy. "It's about justice for my brother," he said, emphasizing accountability over grudges. Yet he admitted skepticism about Diddy's prior statements, questioning whether all denials were completely honest. The renewed push by Tupac's family shows how seriously they take the unresolved murder. By combining legal expertise with fresh investigative energy, they aim to finally get answers. And in doing so, they also remind the world that decades don't erase responsibility, and that for Tupac's legacy, the truth matters more than time. And here's the official side of the story. Sean "Diddy" Combs has consistently denied any involvement in the deaths of Tupac Shakur or Biggie Smalls. Authorities, including the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, have repeatedly confirmed he has never been considered a suspect in either homicide. He's never faced charges connected to the murders. That said, Diddy is not unfamiliar with legal trouble. He is currently serving time for unrelated federal offenses, including convictions tied to sex trafficking and other charges. These unrelated issues, however, have done little to quiet speculation. Decades-old rumors, combined with Keefe D's statements, keep his name tied to the case in public discussion. Despite this, Diddy maintains a firm, unequivocal stance. He dismisses all accusations regarding Tupac and Biggie's deaths as nonsense, refusing to entertain them publicly. Yet in the court of public opinion, allegations linger. His celebrity influence and proximity to key figures during the East Coast-West Coast feud mean that even denials can't fully erase suspicion. And here's why this story just won't go away. Tupac and Biggie's murders remain officially unsolved. Every witness has been scrutinized, but credibility is inconsistent. Keefe D's statements contradict earlier claims. Orlando Anderson is dead. Others stay silent. That combination of unresolved questions and unreliable accounts keeps speculation alive. Modern artists continue to weigh in, pointing fingers, revisiting theories, and asking hard questions. Even a casual comment from someone in the industry can reignite debates and conspiracy theories. Social media ensures the dialogue never dies. The cultural impact is massive. These deaths didn't just remove two of hip-hop's brightest stars. They created a template for mistrust, rivalry, and myth-making in music history. Fans, historians, and journalists are still piecing together timelines, motives, and connections. Until justice is served or answers are fully confirmed, the case hovers in limbo. And because the events involve power, money, and fame, the mystery will never feel completely closed. Tupac's death remains a symbol of talent cut short, of rivalries unchecked, and of questions that refuse to be silenced. Tupac's death left a void that facts alone can't fill. Unanswered questions, lingering suspicions, in the search for justice keep his legacy alive. Music, memory, and myth collide, reminding us why this tragedy still resonates. So what's your take? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe.